It began with a curve, not the curve of a bullet or a flight path across the Pacific sky, but a perfect steel arch. In the dark years of World War II, that arch would come to define the way America built, moved, and fought. A structure so simple, so absurdly practical, that it followed the troops across the world. From muddy airstrips in New Guinea to wind-battered outposts in Iceland. This was the Quonset Hut, the half-cylinder of corrugated steel that could rise from bare ground in less than a day and outlast nearly everything that surrounded it. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't even meant to survive the war, but it became one of the most quietly revolutionary pieces of military engineering in history. Because this curved building, small enough for two men to carry, yet strong enough to face hurricanes and artillery, changed the way soldiers lived, fought, and built the world around them. In 1941, the United States was preparing for a war that would stretch across continents. Tens of thousands of men would soon be stationed on islands, deserts, jungles, and frozen wastelands. And they would need shelter, not just barracks for sleep, but workshops, hospitals, offices, mess halls, hangars, storage, anything that could protect human life from the chaos of weather and war. The Army Corps of Engineers had a problem that seemed impossible to solve. How do you build thousands of durable buildings? Without lumber, without cement, and without time? They needed something soldiers could assemble anywhere. With little training, no heavy tools, and almost no supply chain. And somewhere, in a quiet corner of Rhode Island, a team of engineers and architects answered the call. Their creation wasn't beautiful. It wasn't even meant to last. But it would soon become one of the most recognizable shapes of World War II. A half-cylinder of steel, curved like the horizon, light, cheap, and ready to follow the war wherever it went. It started at a small naval base on the coast of Rhode Island, Quonset Point. That name, borrowed from the local Narragansett word meaning small, long place, would soon be stamped on millions of crates and blueprints around the world. Engineers from the George A. Fuller Construction Company were brought in to solve a crisis. The Navy needed a structure that could be shipped flat, built fast, and strong enough to face the worst climates on Earth. The solution came in the form of a corrugated steel arch, supported by a lightweight skeleton of ribs, anchored to a wooden floor that could be dropped onto almost any surface. Every piece was pre-cut, pre-drilled, and designed so that a small team of soldiers could bolt it together with only hand tools. No concrete, no heavy equipment, no problem. Within hours, a bare patch of dirt could turn into a clinic, a command post, or a machine shop. It was as if civilization itself could unfold from a box. The Quonset Hut didn't rely on beauty. It relied on logic. Every curve, every bolt, every panel had one purpose: speed. It could be packed flat inside a shipping crate, loaded into the belly of a C-47 or the hold of a Liberty ship, and sent anywhere the war demanded. The design was almost childlike in its simplicity. Light steel ribs formed the skeleton. Corrugated sheets of metal became its skin, and a plywood floor rested on wooden beams. A team of 6 men could raise one in under a day. By nightfall, it could already shelter an entire squad from rain, dust, and the noise of war. But its brilliance wasn't just how fast it went up. It was how it could adapt. Need windows? Cut them out. Need insulation? Line the inside with fiberboard. Need a kitchen, or an office, or a medical bay? It could become all three and more in the same week. A soldier could step into one in the jungles of Guadalcanal, and another could walk into one thousands of miles away in North Africa, and both would feel the same. It was, in its own way, the first modular architecture of war. By 1942, the world was learning to recognize that shape. The smooth metal curve gleaming under the Pacific sun, or dust-streaked and bullet-pocked on the African front. The Quonset Hut became as common as the helmet or the Jeep. Everywhere American troops went, the huts followed, rolled up, shipped out, and reborn on new soil. They sprouted on coral islands where trees refused to grow, on muddy airfields hacked out of jungle, and on icy plains where tents would have frozen stiff. Soon there were thousands, then tens of thousands, stretching from the Aleutians to the Solomons, from England to Burma. Inside, men wrote letters home, ate cold rations under dim light, patched uniforms, laughed at bad jokes, and dreamed of going home. The Quonset hut wasn't just shelter. It became a small piece of America, carried to every edge of the war. Step inside a Quonset hut in 1943, and it was a world apart from the chaos outside. The metal walls amplified the sound of rain pounding, but they also kept out the storms, the mud, the dust, the searing sun. Inside, soldiers adapted quickly. Cots lined the floors, blankets hung from hooks. Makeshift stoves clanged in the corners, and the air smelled faintly of sweat, oil, and determination. In the tropics, soldiers improvised screens to fight off mosquitoes. In Alaska, stoves roared to stave off frostbite. It was never luxurious, but compared to sleeping in a leaky tent or an exposed trench, it was a godsend. And it wasn't just for sleeping. Quonset huts became kitchens, field hospitals, offices, chapels, and classrooms. They could house a squad of soldiers one day, a medical unit the next, or a command center the day after that. Flexibility was their superpower. No matter where a unit landed, a ready-made shelter was waiting, a small reminder of order in the chaos of war. From the beaches of Normandy to the jungles of New Guinea, Quonset huts became the backbone of every American advance. On islands like Tarawa in 1943 or the remote atolls of the Pacific, they didn't just provide shelter. They transformed barren sand and mud into functional military bases. Airfields suddenly had barracks, mess halls, and command posts, where hours before there had been nothing. In Europe, after D-Day, huts followed close behind Allied troops, sprouting up as hospitals, offices, and living quarters. When winter slammed the Ardennes during the Battle of the Bulge, troops huddled inside heated Quonset huts, finding warmth in a frozen forest. The huts even conquered extreme climates. Alaska's winds howled against steel arches. North Africa baked under relentless sun. Everywhere, the huts did the same job: fast, practical, reliable. By the end of the war, Quonset huts had been shipped to nearly every corner of the globe. Soldiers joked that you could track American movements just by spotting the curved steel roofs. Allied nations received them, too. Britain, Australia, and even the Soviet Union used these portable homes to keep troops ready for battle. Wherever they stood, Quonset huts left an unmistakable mark, a symbol of American ingenuity, and a promise that soldiers, no matter how far from home, would always have a place to sleep, eat, and regroup. When the guns fell silent in 1945, most people expected Quonset huts to vanish. After all, they were temporary, a wartime fix. But instead, they found a second life, one that reshaped post-war America. With over 100,000 huts built, the military suddenly had a surplus. Some were scrapped, but thousands were shipped home, ready to meet a new kind of crisis, housing millions of returning GIs and their families. Colleges jumped in. Entire Quonset hut villages appeared, offering kitchens, bedrooms, and little yards for veterans. Universities like Michigan, Minnesota, Brown, and UCLA housed thousands of students in these curved steel shells. Beyond campuses, whole towns adopted them. Churches, diners, workshops, garages, barns. Almost anything that needed a roof found a Quonset hut solution. They became symbols of recovery, of practicality, proof that something built for war could serve peace. And they didn't stop there. Overseas, huts left behind during the war were absorbed into local communities in the Philippines, Guam, and Europe. Homes, schools, shops, Quonset huts quietly helped rebuild lives. They weren't perfect, hot in summer, cold in winter, occasionally leaky, but compared to the chaos of the previous decade, they offered stability, a sense of normalcy, a roof over one's head. By the 1950s and 60s, many were still standing, patched, repurposed, sometimes forgotten, but stubborn reminders of ingenuity, endurance, and adaptability. Even today, rusted or restored, Quonset huts Landscapes from college campuses to workshops, whispering the same story. Built fast, built cheap, built to last. Even decades after World War II, Quonset huts didn't disappear. They quietly became icons, proof that smart design and industrial power could solve global problems. Architects and builders in the 21st century rediscovered the concept. Modern Quonset-inspired homes, workshops, and eco-shelters carry the same principles: simplicity, durability, and cost-effectiveness. The idea of flat-pack kits shipped anywhere and assembled on-site, once revolutionary in 1942, now inspires prefab housing and even companies like IKEA. For veterans, Quonset huts held memories. They were the backdrop for letters home, for laughter with comrades, for exhaustion after battle. For civilians, they became familiar landmarks, symbols of American resilience and ingenuity. Artists painted them, filmmakers used them, writers referenced them. By the 1950s, Quonset huts had crept into American pop culture, embodying both the grit of war and the hope of rebuilding. Even today, you can spot them, rusted half-cylinders standing stubbornly on college fields, behind workshops, or tucked into rural landscapes. Some restored, some abandoned, all telling the same story. Built fast, built cheap, built to last. Quonset huts were meant to be temporary. Instead, they endured. They became markers of a generation's struggle and triumph, witnesses to a world transformed by war. Next time you see one of those curved steel shells, remember, this humble hut helped win a world war, sheltered soldiers on every continent, and shaped post-war life in ways no one could have predicted. In its own quiet way, the Quonset hut stands alongside the Jeep, the Sherman tank, and the Liberty ship, a symbol of ingenuity, practicality, and the enduring power of simplicity.